I'm Tom Grossi, a New York City comedian and diehard Green Bay Packers fan for almost 20 years.
In the end zone, it is caught for the win. Richard Rodgers with a walk-off touchdown. A game ender for the Packers.
In 2015, I created a podcast where each week I talk to fans from opposing teams to share their story and to get yelled at for about an hour for being a Packers fan. Last year, I met amazing people and went to amazing places. And this year, I'm ready to do it all over again.
Make no mistake about it, I will be remembered as a Packer.
Enjoy the show. Grossi Posse Packer Nation, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Packcast, the podcast where you don't need to be a Packers fan, but it sure does help. I am your host, Tom Grossi. We are coming off a Sunday loss, 32-33 against the Atlanta Falcons. Before we get into the game, I want to wish all of our viewers out there a very happy Halloween, in which this episode is currently being recorded on, because I feel like we are living a Halloween nightmare of injuries that we can never wake up from. But with that, let's break down the game. Before we even get into the offense, the defense, let's take a look at this injury report, because this is something that stood out to me. People who are currently out: Eddie Lacy, Sam Shields, Clay Matthews, Rollins, Randall, Cobb, Starks, Montgomery, and Cook. Montgomery, a little bit of a shocker. In that 20 minutes beforehand, he was dealing with some illness, they were saying, with his kidneys. And Cobb was kind of questionable and then got turned into doubtful, I think, the day before. And so with all of these injuries, I honestly, right before the game, was thinking this might be a blowout. Because the Falcons have an extremely high-powered offense. People like Julio Jones, Mohamed Sanu, of course you have Devontae Freeman, Matt Ryan has been playing really well. And so I knew that we could score against their defense. It was going to be their offense that was going to give us a lot of problems. And it looked like from the first quarter, it was going to be a shootout. Because Rodgers, he played extremely well. We'll get to that in a minute. But the defense, for the most part, I mean, could all things considered, I mean, you can't be too critical. I mean, Gunter played well. I mean, he held Julio Jones in check. He didn't have a big day. I mean, he got hurt. Julio Jones got hurt a little bit in the beginning, which staggered his process. Mohamed Sanu did have a big day. But again, you have Julio Jones, you're matching up with him, and there's only so much you could do because you're going to dedicate more guys to him. But Sanu, he broke out, and of course he had that game-winning touchdown when he was matched up against Jake Ryan, which wasn't, of course, the best matchup you can have. But the run defense held. Devontae Freeman, he had a few big runs, but for the most part, I think the biggest thing was they didn't get to the quarterback enough. They had a couple sacks, but I mean, the missing Clay Matthews really hurt with that as well. And then, of course, we're still playing with cornerbacks. Gunter is our fourth guy, and he's our number one right now. So we really need to get healthy and quick, or this is not going to be fun. But all things considered, I felt more confident from this loss than I did from the Chicago Bears win. Because Rodgers, I mean, the guy had a day and a half, 28 for 38, 246 yards, 4 TDs, 60 yards rushing. He was our number one rusher as well, as we really had no one in the backfield except Rip and also Niall Davis, who we'll talk about in a second. But Rodgers looked like 2011-esque in that this team reminded me very much of 2011 in that, all right, I don't trust this defense right now because they're completely injured. Let's give the ball to Rodgers, and he's just going to put the entire team on his back. And that's exactly what he did. And I thought it was going to come down to whoever had the ball last. They were going to win the game. Unfortunately, there was just not enough time left for us to do that. We also lost a big timeout when Jordy Nelson went down for a play, and they charged us an injury timeout. That was incredibly costful as well. But I have to say I'm not as depressed and sad and mopey as I usually am after losses, because this kind of gave me a lot of hope in that our offense is starting to click. This is 2 games in a row now, and you have the defense where it could only get better. Hopefully, I mean, unless literally they just all get injured, but for the most part, I was happy with the way this team played. Devontae Adams, who I've been praising now for several weeks on this podcast, he had 12 receptions, 74 yards, some big catches. Nelson got involved in the game early. I thought he was going to have a huge day because from the first series, I was like, oh man, they're going to tear this secondary apart. But only 4 catches, 94 yards, 1 TD, so he kind of slowed down. But you also had a Jeff Janis touchdown, a Trevor Davis touchdown, and a Geronimo Allison touchdown. But let's talk about Trevor Davis real quick. That kid is fast, and he's a 4.3 kind of guy. He's a great returner in that he has a lot of speed. He knows how to run routes. He had caught that amazing goal line snatch and kept both feet in bounds for a touchdown. So I'm thinking that Trevor Davis is going to get a lot of work as the season progresses, because we have a long stretch to go. And Geronimo Allison, who has the greatest name on the Green Bay Packers at the moment, really happy to see that kid kind of emerge and get his first TD. That was something awesome to see. But I mean, looking right now at what we got, we have the Colts next week, who is another high-powered offense. They can put up some points in kind of a weaker defense. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw something similar. I mean, we need to get healthy. I mean, I'm assuming Clay Matthews is going to be back, but I'm not really sure about Shields. I don't know, but Rollins and Randall, we need them back stat, because this is getting ugly. But again, I mean, if this team can come on late, and I mean we're just 4-3 right now, so we're more than in it. There's nothing over about this season. There's no reason to push the panic button in that we're suffering from a bunch of injuries. Hopefully we get healthier, and I think this offense is starting to click. And as I've said many times on here before, I would rather us have a slowish start and a quick finish, because that's the kind of stuff that you want to see when you're in December playing football. You want to see the team firing on all cylinders then, rather than them starting 6-0 and then deciding to completely fall apart at the end. But I have a feeling we might see the Falcons again. So I would say our offense, I don't want to say they're back, but they're, as John Wick would say, I'm thinking they're back. All right, so some other big news over the weekend, because we didn't have this show. Jared Abbrederis, who is a guy that I know a lot of Green Bay Packers fans really liked when I was in training camp. I mean, the guy, everybody loved him. He's a Wisconsin kid, and he got released. He was waived, so that was something I was not anticipating. It seems to be that he was hurt a little bit, not enough to go on IR, and the Packers wind up just waiving him. And I know that there were some Packer fans that were pretty upset about that, but he had a litany of injuries. He couldn't really stay on the field. I think he had the talent, and I hope he does well somewhere else that's in the AFC. But I mean, taking a look at Trevor Davis, guys like him, Allison playing well. We have Janis, and then you have Cobb, and you also have Jordy. I mean, we are not struggling with receivers right now, and I think that I think it's going to be okay that we release Abbrederis. But one of the more shocking things that came out today was the fact that we released Niall Davis, and we are not going to lose any draft picks for that. So Niall Davis, I mean, he played a whole game and a half for the Green Bay Packers, but yesterday on Sunday he didn't really look good. You had Rip in the backfield. He was broke. I think he had like 34 yards or something like that. And then when you have Montgomery healthy, and then of course when Lacey and Starks come back, you're not really going to need him anymore. So hey, time to cut the cord a little bit early with that. But again, I'm optimistic about what the rest of the season looks like. It's just it all is dependent on if we get healthy. If we get healthy, I think this is a team that can go very, very far. But right now, I want to get a wild card spot, and then we can start looking a little bit further. But this is start. It was funny while I was watching the game yesterday. I started getting a little reminiscent of the 2010 season, because I was like, man, the Falcons beat us at the last second in 2010 too, and then I was remembering that divisional round, which we just went back to Atlanta and destroyed them. I'm hoping that happens again. That would be fantastic. In other In other news, of course, you have the Seahawks. The good old Seahawks. They fell to the Saints, which made me very, very, very happy. And you also had the Panthers, who kind of made a little bit of a comeback and beat the Arizona Cardinals, holding them in check as well. So those are kind of like the teams we're keeping an eye on in the NFC. And then the Cowboys, in an amazing Sunday night game, wound up beating the Eagles in overtime. I can see the Cowboys being they could be really good this year. And again, the big talk about is Tony Romo going to come back and take over for Dak. I mean, you can't pull him right now. You literally can't pull him the way he's playing. He played a little bit sloppy in the beginning, like the second, third quarter, and then kind of he won the game for them. So if I'm Jerry Jones, you can't pull him. Fantasy this week, it looks like I'm going 2 out of 5. I think I'm eligible for the playoffs in like 3 out of my 5 leagues. One is just a complete loss because I drafted Jamal Charles, Danny Woodhead, Josh Gordon, who really panned out for me really, really well. Keenan Allen. It was a dumpster fire. So I think I've just put that to the side and just hope for the best. But on Thursday, we will have our interview with the Indianapolis Colts fan. So please check that out on SoundCloud and iTunes. If you did not check out the Falcons fan interview, which was an amazing interview, we interviewed Ryan, who was a moderator for the subreddit for the Falcons. Please check that out. That's on SoundCloud. That's on iTunes. I'll put the link in the description for you. It was a really, really great episode. Had a lot of fun talking to him. But you can always find me at TomGrossiComedy.com, TomGrossi Comedy, or at Tom Grossi Comedy on Twitter. Check out Packcast, Packast on iTunes, SoundCloud, and of course every Tuesday on YouTubes. So check us out every week on there. I love hearing from you. But thank you so much for tuning in. I will see you on Thursday with the Colts fan. Keep your chin up, Packer fans. And for all the other fans watching, you're probably healthier than us. You probably are. I'm Tom Grossi. And as always, go Pack Go.